Hark the bardic paladin, who sings and plays again. He tells the tales of glory and weaves a magic story. He'll join you at your table and ask you to share a fable. Heroes of humble origin, villains who must be fought again. No matter their skill or prowess, the people in life are countless. So we pray you heed our request. Enjoy this tale of sidekicks and side quests. And side quests.
Episode 97, Nox, Nori, and the Dragonstar. Welcome to Sidekicks and Side Quests, the Dungeons & Dragons podcast that helps to put humans back into humanity and breathe life into your campaign NPCs with backstory and bravado. That's right, we're building a world, one character at a time. I am your host, Kurt Krenwelge, the Bardic Paladin, and I'll be joining Katie DeMatteis Ben MartinMooney's table in the Levitating Platter. Hello everyone, and welcome to another exciting episode of Sidekicks and Side Quests, still the best unofficial, big capital underscore letters, unofficial Dungeons & Dragons podcast, in my humbly biased opinion. Before I introduce my mystery contestants today, I'd like to go ahead and give a shout out to our first sponsor, which just happens to be Plus One EXP. You've heard me talk about Tony Vicinda and his amazing mastercraft of beard balms, game design, and community building. He's got it all. He's got all of the beard balms named after all the basic stats from D&D. So you can get a can delivered to your door, apply it to your face, and smell the sweet aroma and that sweet victory that comes along with increased strength, dexterity, charisma, and more. The whole game that launched this whole enterprise, Beards and Beyond, is the indie RPG that's just taking the Hair Nation by storm. So if you are interested in this game, you should know that he's developed other games, including Repugnant, iToaster, Down We Go, Through the Void, Vamp Nugula, and Brandstanding, to name a few. If you support Plus One EXP, either by buying something from their website or going to tonyplusone.itch.io, it all helps funnel into the Plus One Forward program, which seeks to support additional indie tabletop content creators to continue making awesome stuff. So I'd highly encourage you, follow Tony and Plus One EXP on all those socials, Twitters, Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and the Discord server if you haven't jumped on that, in order to keep up with all the various projects that are being worked on, as well as upcoming interviews, one-shots, and actual plays of some of these other amazing indie TTRPGs. So if you don't mind, when you go to plus1exp.com, use that affiliate code box to type in the special secret word, Randolph, when you're buying a beard balm or a beard RPG, in order to get some savings on your purchase at no extra cost to you. Again, that code is Randolph, RANDOLPH, at checkout on the website, plus1exp.com. All right, without further ado, hello, Double Trouble mystery contestants today. Would you care to introduce yourself, tell us who it is that you are, and what is it that you do?
Hi.
Hello.
I'm Katie DeMatteis.
I'm Ben MartinMooney.
And we do a lot of things, but I think primarily we have a Twitch channel called Amateurish Productions, where we do TTRPG live streams, interviews. Sometimes we play games. Sometimes, I don't know. It's kind of a variety channel with a focus in TTRPGs. I would say that's the best way to quantify it. Qualify it.
Yeah, and if I understand, it's a brand new stream, and you guys were getting up and running just as all of this controversy in the hobby was beginning. And so if I'm understanding, are you guys going to stay the course with the original plan of the original system you were using, or are you in the middle of converting your stream into a different underlying TTRPG mechanic?
We are making the switch. So we started with 5th edition and are in the process of transitioning sort of piece by piece towards Pathfinder 2nd edition.
However, that does not mean that we don't also play D&D on the channel.
Yes.
This is our main Tuesday night campaign that we are transitioning into Pathfinder, but we have had and will continue to have one-shots, even multi-shots. The way that we are structuring things on the channel is that everything probably starting this summer that will happen in the same world. But we don't want to confine that world to a specific system. So we will be playing 5e, we will be playing 2e, we will probably play some indie game systems, probably play some PBTA, and just try to figure out how to build a world essentially how to build a world that's system agnostic.
And it's Ben that's the game master, I suppose, kind of the mastermind behind the
For
world.
now.
To say that I am the mastermind behind the world does me an immense amount of credit that I do not deserve. It is fully a trio. So Katie and I and our friend Zeki, who have all worked as a unholy trinity of world development. Fully 66% of the credit deserves their names attached to it.
Oh, of course. Yeah, certainly I would echo the same sentiment with how it works with my homebrew. Certainly major contributions from my wife and previous guests of the show, Catherine. I've been impressed with the world building that we did in our campaign between all three of us, and especially all my other players as well with their contributions. It's certainly the best when maybe the game master can offload some of that creativity and the world building pressures off of their shoulders and just be like, is there something interesting in your backstory that I should know, or like something that you think would be cool? And it's like, great, now I have an idea I didn't have to think of myself.
It's the best feeling in the world. You're like, thank you for doing my job for me and doing it better than I ever could have.
And also, when we have guest GMs and DMs come on starting soonish, we're going to be allowing them to build in the world as well.
Yeah.
So it's going to be very much a group effort to flesh out Mitra, which I'm very excited about personally.
We even chat has the members of the community who have hung out and watched have actually made contributions, whether it's occasionally suggesting names for characters, or most recently, canonically, the Jersey Shore exists in the world of Mitra, although it's spelled a little bit differently. And
with a D and a Z or something in there.
There's some accents over the E's,
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, and so we should know that there's like a Tuesday night main campaign, but then there's also other activities that are happening. I think there was like something with Legos and something with cooking or something like that.
Yes. That is one of the not TTRPG related, but more of a variety stream. We have a friend who's a professional chef. He's also a huge nerd. And we've been setting up in his kitchen. He has been teaching just general cooking skills, making meals that are inspired by different D&D classes. So we've done Monk and Warlock, and this weekend, actually, we are doing Fighter and Wizard. Don't quote me on that.
Fighter for sure, Wizard ?
And that's super fun for me because the boys are in the kitchen cooking and I am just chilling building Legos while they do that, and then I get to eat food.
The win-win situation.
It's great. 10 out of 10.
Awesome. Well, I think it's a dead giveaway, but this next question, do you currently or have you ever played Dungeons and Dragons before?
Yes.
I have been known to meddle with a dungeon and a dragon on occasion, yes.
Nice.
D&D was my first TTRPG and still is my first love, despite anything else that may or may not happen in the industry.
Is 5th edition like the first system?
No, actually. I have a weird intro to TTRPGs, which is, I grew up doing acting and doing improv and was a huge nerd my whole life and did all the generic nerd fantasy things and loved all the books and this, that, and the other thing. And then I actually listened to the Adventure Zone, which is the McElroy podcast.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, what is this really cool storytelling system that they are using, which D&D 5th edition. And that was actually what Ben and I bonded over on our first date. And then Ben was like, hey, like you like D&D so much, but you've never played it before. So let me DM your first campaign for you. And the rest is somewhat history.
And I also actually found D&D relatively late in life. So I've only been playing for, I think I started playing when I was 25, so like 6-ish years, and DMing for only about a year less than that. I think, it's one of those things where it's like, oh, okay, I could totally see myself doing all these additional things. So I am also relatively new to it. The Hobbit was my favorite book, period, growing up. This is sort of my whole life really culminated in me finding this thing and being like, oh, cool, I get to like buy rocks that have numbers on them and spend time with my friends in a fantasy setting. Sure, sign me up. How do I do this forever?
I was late to the game too. I came in college, but back in my day, it was 4th edition when I started playing.
Oh.
So I have that 4th edition cred, which I know other people out there are like, oh, 4th edition, too video gamey. But I don't know. It was a good introduction point. So then when 5th edition rolled around, I was like, oh, okay. So this is kind of like 4th edition, but it's like old school. So it's like, okay, I kind of like this. So I've latched on to 5th edition. It's been a great time. There are aspects of 4th edition I miss. Certainly watching MCDM Productions doing the Dusk campaign exclusively on Fantasy Grounds on 4th edition mechanics has been a joy, being like, oh yeah, I remember, yeah, +2 and getting flanking advantage and moving squares and activating daily powers and all that stuff. It's like, yeah, I remember all that stuff. So it was a good time.
Crunchy.
Yeah, crunchy munchy for sure. Well, the giveaway of this podcast being called Sidekicks and Side Quests is that we get to ask questions about your favorite sidekicks and favorite side quests. So first of those, who's been your favorite NPC or sidekick character, whether they've been from an RPG, maybe a video game, or if not, film, television, history, literature, etc. And why is this character your favorite?
You want to go first, Ben?
I was going to ask you if you wanted to, but I have mine locked and loaded.
Go for it.
All right, we did some homework, so I came
Yeah,
prepared.
this is true. Ben and I did sit up late one night going, all right, let's name sidekicks and let's pick which ones are.
Yeah.
This might be a bit controversial to call this particular character a sidekick, but Pam from Archer is my favorite sidekick, quote unquote.
Okay, I could understand the controversy. I mean, I don't know if I'm caught up on the latest seasons of Archer, but
I'm not either.
Yeah, but I know, yeah, she had her start as a sidekick, kind of moved up into like the main rotation cast, and then like when, I don't know, has she gone back down to side character? Or
that's a phenomenal question. I don't know, but
someone will tell us in the comments or something of this episode.
If you disagree, don't at me unless you're going to be nice about it.
Yeah.
And if you agree, definitely at me. But yeah, Pam is great. 10 out of 10.
Yeah, I also feel like my answer is not entirely a sidekick because I think this show doesn't really have sidekicks. I feel like everyone is pretty important, but they are not the main character. But I have to go with Little Kato from Final Space because that show is so wonderful. And Little Kato specifically, just like the character growth and the journey that he goes on as one of the members of this space team. And I guess Gary would be considered the protagonist. Arguably, again, everything is arguable. Yeah, I love Little Kato. I also love Avocado, who might be maybe more of a sidekick because, well, I don't want to spoil anything if you haven't watched it, but
I don't know what this property is. If you wanted to enlighten me.
Oh, it's so good. Oh, okay.
It's also being completely removed from the internet.
Oh,
yeah. It's one of those ones that got canceled and is being just like erased from history, and it is a travesty.
It's a cartoon that is very much not geared towards kids, and it is funny, but also incredibly poignant and incredibly heartwarming, and explores really deep, gut-wrenching emotions while also bringing levity in ways that I genuinely did not think possible. I am genuinely heartbroken that they are not going to have any more seasons because they're 3 seasons. They ended the 3rd one on a pretty huge cliffhanger, and I'm never gonna get to know what happened. And
it's like the same thing with Farscape. Farscape kind of ended on a major cliffhanger, and then I guess Sci-Fi Channel did like a movie to kind of tie up the loose end, but that's hard to watch or find or something. It's like Firefly, Firefly was short-lived on Fox before they were lucky, to get Serenity the movie. So
yeah.
Well, before we delve too deeply in the swamps of sorrow, what's been one of your favorite side quests, either from an RPG, video game, movie, film, television, literature, etc.? And why is this side quest stuck out to you?
Ben and I argued because we have the same 3, and so we had to divvy up between the 2 of us who was going to say what. But I am going to go with, in World of Warcraft, actually this current expansion, which is Dragonflight, there is a side quest where I'm not taking your side quest, Ben. I know which one you want. I'm giving it to you. There's a quest where there's this little girl who, her mother and I think potentially the rest of her family has died recently. And you are helping her because she really wants to be a hero. And so you go into this cave and you find this monster that really has no interest in fighting. And you have to convince the monster that he should pretend to let the little girl defeat him so that she can like have some amount of joy and feel like she's done some good in the world. And it's really cute. And she hits him once with the stick and he kind of goes, oh, and falls over. And then, you know, you have this sweet little moment with the little girl. And I was like, oh God, am I getting teary over a video game? What's happening here?
Oh,
So that one's mine.
pretty adorable.
It was so sweet.
It's pretty great. And mine is same expansion, same game, but there is one of the like factions is this like semi-nomadic group of tribes that are all interconnected. And one of the quest lines is with this dog called Tyven, who is the size of a horse. And essentially they are trying to figure out like what this dog's purpose is. Like, he has been with us this whole time. He eats an extremely large amount of food and he has not contributed in some way. And if, you know, he continues to not contribute, we can't keep him around. So you take him hunting and he's terrible at hunting because he's afraid of all the other animals. Then you take him to try to be like a herding dog, but he is unsuccessful at herding anything because he's also afraid of those sheep, basically, and he runs away from them. And then there is an attack, and you are, you know, sent to go like find the survivors and whatnot. And the dog, it turns out, is just like really good at rescuing people. It's like incredibly strong, and so it just like lifts the broken buildings off of these people and like picks them up and brings them, you know, to safety. And then at the very end, there's a little girl whose, I think, mother or both parents have died. And he just
a lot of parent death.
Yeah.
In Dragonflight.
Yeah. It's like reading backstories from everyone's D&D characters.
Yeah,
all their parents are dead. And then this like massive dog just like goes and curls up around this like little centaur child. And I think it was like, it had been a long day, and I don't think I'd slept particularly well the night before. And like, as the dog is like rescuing all these people, and there's sort of the dialogue being overlaid of them being like, oh, you know, he just cares a lot. I was like, oh, I'm actively tearing up. This is adorable and so like wholesome and sweet. So yeah, that's my favorite. Just a big fluffy boy.
We're both crying over parent deaths. So.
I didn't cry over that. I just cried about the dog.
Okay, well,
I can understand as a relatively new dog owner later in life. It's like, oh, I understand this fluffy little turd who will, you know, get into all kinds of mischief and trouble, but then like will curl up with you. He's chewing on his bone or whatever, just, you know, sleeping, snoozing. You're just like, okay, all right, it's all worth it. Yep, there you go. Yep. You've earned it, kind of a thing.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
The way that we round out the personal interview section is we ask the question, what are you passionate about and why?
That's easy for me. Storytelling. That has been my biggest passion my entire life. It's why I like books and movies and TV, well, good books and movies and TV shows. I grew up in a household where, I mean, my dad is a writer, and story was so much a part of my childhood and my adolescence. And like I say that I was writing stories before I could actually write, because I would dictate stories to my dad and we would workshop them together. And I like exploring real world things through the lens of fiction. And I really appreciate a well-crafted, fleshed out world.
This is less easy for me to answer. Especially without like kind of copying Katie, although my childhood was not the same in the sense of like storytelling being such a formative part of who I was at an early age. I mean, I'm passionate about like a few things. One is food, although that's not necessarily terribly helpful at the moment. But the other is in the context of like tabletop gaming in particular is, and as a DM as well, is providing people the opportunity and space to sort of explore their own personal experiences or traumas or neurodivergence in a way that is safe, because it's not you, even though it, you know, it's like this character is a self-insert, and allowing people to sort of like explore that and kind of get to know not just their character but themselves in the process, and creating a space where they feel comfortable doing that and like they will be taken care of in the process.
Then also another good answer I would throw in there, just because I've learned this from social media from the two of you, is that another good thing to be passionate about is your wife is the correct answer as well.
Can we splice that in at the beginning and be like, so there's a bunch of things that I'm, and first and foremost is my wife. Can we do that in post?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Perfect. Amazing.
I'm really surprised you didn't say people, Ben. I was really expecting you to say that you're passionate about people. Ben is a people collector. When we were planning a big wedding, which we've since changed to a much smaller wedding, or changed, I guess, past tense, His list was like 300 people long, and it wasn't even family.
It was 220.
Give the man credit where credit's due.
I apologize for the slander.
People are important. I have become much less of a people person over the course of COVID, and I think it's just because, like you spend so much time away from them and then reintegrating into society has been kind of weird, but still collect people. Yeah.
Certainly, I would like to congratulate you on the nuptials. And
Thank you.
yeah, it's another big
Thank you very
life
much.
achievement. So, kudos to you. And with that spirit of kudos and gratitude, we're going to move on forward to another segment that I like to call NPC creation. All right. Well, NPC creation is brought to you by you, the podcast audience, and our awesome patrons from Patreon. That's right. Now is the time in the show where we give a shout out to our comfortable patrons and above with a loud hurrah. So to you, Katie Downey, Anson Jablinski, and my parents, we say cheers. So again, this is for patrons who donate $2 or more a month. All of these folks are my highest tier, wealthy level patrons. So that means they get to introduce an element of chance to our random tables, which we might get to use here today. So if you want to learn more and join the cheapest podcast Patreon community out there, check the show notes below, go to my podcast website, or just go on directly to patreon.com/sidekicks and side quests to find out more info on our 3 tiers, $1, $2, $4 a month, and help us expand our operations at the Levitating Platter in this demi-plane and worlds beyond. All right, so obviously the part where we get to make up characters on the show, and I believe preparing and planning for this, y'all opted to randomize a pair of characters. Did you have any ideas as far as maybe this is like the sort of idea we had of a relationship between our characters? Or when we get to like the ancestry question, is it going to be like you're okay with being wildly different ancestries, or you both roll and then it's like, okay, well, whichever one we like, we'll just pick with that one so we're both the same thing, or anything like that?
I am down to be different, and I'm down for us to be an unusual duo if that becomes the case.
Say no
And
more.
honestly,
say no
I
more.
kind of would like to roll them and then figure out what the relationship is. I feel like that makes sense.
Okay. All right. Very good.
That's okay
I just know
you.
sometimes it helps the people with the focus, especially if we have double the guests, where they're like, oh my gosh, how is my character supposed to relate to this other one? So, all right. Well, we will let the dice take us where they will. So the first question we have to ask ourselves is, what is going to be the name of our respective characters? And we determine this by rolling a d20.
Cool. I got a 4.
I got a 1.
4
Starting
and
out
1.
strong.
Okay. Well, with a 4, Katie, your answer was provided by previous guest Melly Doucette from Demiplane, Nox, Nox.
Cool.
And then with a 1 for Ben, your answer was provided by famous critter artist Lauren Walsh.
Oh, yeah.
Alanora. So Alanora. So Nox and Alanora is what we're working with. And then the next thing we get to roll for is we need to determine what's the ancestry of our character. And we will determine this by rolling 2d10s for a d100 effect.
Okay. I got 100.
100.
I got 100.
Okay. Your answer is Yeti.
Oh, okay.
I got an 11.
11.
There's a lot of ones in my night.
And a lamia.
How do you spell that?
Lamia. I think those are like the Sphinx Centaur demon creatures, if I remember my lore. So Yeti and a lamia.
Dynamic duo.
Well, moving on then, we need to figure out what's the job or role in society for Nox and Alanora. We'll determine this by rolling just a regular d10.
Okay, where's my d10?
Which one of you is going to not mess me up the most?
6.
Okay, 6 was suggested by previous guest Bobby Angel, deep sea archaeologist. A Yeti that's a deep sea archaeologist. Okay.
And I got a 9.
A 9. Aha. Okay, so your answer was provided by previous guest Katie Ruvalcaba, apothecary. So apparently Alanora the Lamia runs an apothecary, and then Nox is a deep sea archaeologist.
I love it. Love that big furry Yeti just scuba diving down into the ocean.
And then let's see, the next thing we get to roll for before we take a pause on the dice rolling is, what is the age range category of our characters. We'll determine this with a D8.
Oh, come on, really?
Did you get a 1?
I did.
Okay, well, a 1 is a child age Lamia that's somehow running an apothecary. What did Nox get?
2.
Teenager.
Okay.
So are we okay with these responses, or did you want to
I
change
think
them?
it's great. I think it's hilarious.
I'm rolling with this precocious little Lamia named Alanora who runs an apothecary.
Okay.
Why not?
Listen, Nox can be doing an internship. You don't know.
So now comes to the question of describe your physical appearance. So with these details in mind for each of your characters, when you think of these traits that we've learned, how do you picture the character?
Oh, I already can see it. So, I guess, what's the average Yeti height? Like 7 feet? Does that feel right? I'm going with 7 feet. I could be totally wrong. But yeah, no, Nox stands about 7 feet tall, really long, shaggy white hair with some like purple highlights in it. She's got a septum piercing as well as a nose ring. She's got lots of like bangle bracelets on, a black crop top, and skinny jeans. Although obviously when she is going deep sea scuba diving to do archaeology, she's gonna wear a wetsuit. And yeah, she's got a little bit of an attitude. But you know, she's really passionate about the ocean. What can you do?
Interesting. So Nox does decide to wear like actual clothing, even though
For sure.
she's sufficiently covered in enough thick white fur to be able to withstand Arctic tundra-like conditions.
Listen. Being a fashion icon is hard, okay? Sometimes it's not comfortable, but you make the choices to look your best.
Oh, okay. Well, interesting fact I did learn from the Forgotten Realms wiki page. Apparently, in the winter time, their fur is white, but then in the summer, it somehow turns brown. So,
Oh.
And they do stand 8 feet tall, so 7 feet's probably about on par with the teenagers.
Just like to point out, it is a heck of a decision to wear a black crop top when you are just a white, shaggy beast. That's a
correct.
strong stance. That is a very strong
fashion
stance.
icon. She is pushing boundaries, okay?
Just looks like a gray shirt.
And then as far as Alanora is concerned, when you picture this Lamia, child Lamia, running an apothecary, what do you see?
I fully have this mental image of, I'm blanking on what the kind of cat is, that it's like the short-haired cats that are like supposedly from Egypt and are like very delicate and are like, oh, I guess like, oh, they have hair. It's not fur. They're hypoallergenic. And I don't terribly love cats, so I don't know what they're called. Sorry, cat fans.
So it's like a sphinx or a hairless Egyptian or something like that.
Yeah, that sounds absolutely right. Couldn't tell you. And then I think it's just this like, it's the body of a smallish child wearing an apron that I think, because she is so small, I think that she has to use her like front legs to like sort of perch on the counter. And so consequently, she has an apron that goes, around her neck like a normal apron does, but then also around her front paws and ties sort of like in the middle of her cat torso. And she's wearing, she runs an apothecary. She's wearing things that are hydrophobic. So she's wearing some like waxed leather, sort of like a light waxed leather shirt with like, something cotton underneath. I don't think she wears any clothing necessarily on her lower half.
The classic centaur problem of like, if a centaur wore pants, how exactly would the pants work?
Yeah, I wasn't trying to tackle that on this episode. She could, but where do you wear the skirt? Do I wear it around my human waist or do I wear it around my cat waist?
Oh,
Right?
that's a fair point. All right, no pants.
Pantsless.
And then let's see. If you had to describe each of your characters with 3 adjectives, what 3 adjectives would you use?
I want to get all 3 of them before I say anything. Sassy, dramatic, and passionate.
And I think I'm going quiet, meticulous, and mischievous because she is part cat after all. Yeah, I think the temptation to knock things off her own countertop is strong.
Interesting. And so with Alanora, with her working in this apothecary child age range, is someone else really in charge of the shop and she just happens to work there?
Fully. I think her parents own it. She just is very much under the impression as a child that it is her shop. So she believes in her heart of hearts that she owns this.
So with Nox, how does a yeti end up getting into deep sea archaeology? Last I knew, the deep seas were not connected to the Himalayas, kind of a thing.
Yeah, I think when she was little, she read a lot of books about the ocean. That was like her special interest as a kid. And, she was applying to internships in other places in the world to see if she couldn't get out and travel and maybe learn about places that are a little bit less landlocked. And she got super lucky. She got great internship offer for the summer. Her parents were a little bit stressed out about, letting her go be on her own. But so far it's been great. She's made a lot of friends. She's probably been making some not great decisions because, she's a teenager on her own for the first time. But all in all, great life experience.
So now that we kind of know and understand at least some of the basics about Nox and Alanora, how do these characters know each other? Because obviously a Yeti and a Lamia wouldn't on the surface necessarily relate to each other, but surely there's some kind of fascinating story here.
Yeah, I was thinking that Nox might frequent that apothecary and just likes to kind of hang out when she doesn't have anything else to do. Maybe has taken sort of a maternal big sister approach to Nori. I'm going to call you Nori. That's your name now.
That absolutely bothers her.
Right, little kid insistent, like, no, my name is Alanora, and then teenager being like, yeah, whatever, Nori. Okay,
Nori.
sure.
I also figured maybe water breathing potions.
Yeah.
For your guys, as like a backup.
Well, I imagine that's probably, I said scuba diving, but this is magic, right? So that's a core part of the scuba kit is water breathing potions.
Sure.
My family is the premier supplier of water breathing potions in the area.
Now, remind me again, Forgotten Realms wiki, what does the stated lore say about Lamias, and then how are we going to be creative and maybe change some things, because we can. That's the hobby. That's what we do. So, according to Hoyle, it says, sinister creatures who lived in desert ruins sustain themselves by eating human flesh.
Oh, God.
Use a variety of abilities, including seduction, disguise, ventriloquism, illusions, mirages, mirror images, and other such things to lure, entice, and confuse those who wandered into their midst into dangerous situations. So, I was thinking like, okay, desert, okay, like a desert port town, and then maybe that's where all the deep sea archaeology stuff is going on, and that's how they would meet up. But it'd be kind of interesting because, if we're imagining these Lamias have this reputation and this aura of intrigue and fear and all that kind of stuff, then how do a pair of Lamias, I guess, start a family and then integrate into society to then start an apothecary shop? Like, what made them decide, you know what? Living in ruins and trying to get people to eat them is just not working for us anymore.
It just feels like the story is just so played out, and I think that some old habits die hard, and I think that they have used their influence, shall we say, to secure a chokehold on the market. So I do think that my parents have a monopoly on the sort of apothecary market here in this city. There are no others. They have done away with, we'll say, the competition.
Oh, okay. And then of course Nox maybe isn't the wiser, being a teenager, maybe not being like, I wonder why there isn't another apothecary in this desert port town. Oh well, whatever.
Nox has never been to a desert port town before. For all she knows, there's only one apothecary ever.
Oh yeah, that's true. Yeah, the little mountain villages, they only had one shop that did the one thing, and that's it. Like, why would a larger city need more than just one?
For sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Totally checks out. No questions asked.
Okay, so we know that this apothecary business is very critical for Nox and her deep sea archaeological efforts, and so that's why she's always there and visiting Alanora. Is she doing a lot of the transactions with Alanora or the parents, or this is just like the budding sister-ish sort of relationship?
I think that since Nox has an internship, that like one of her duties as part of that internship is to pick up the water breathing potions every morning. So she's probably at the apothecary at least 5 days a week, unless she's, they're going scuba diving more days than that, in which case it's 7 days a week potentially. So probably just kind of evolved organically of her seeing Nori every morning.
It's Alanora.
It's Nori.
It's Alanora. I think I run the front of house for my parents because people have a harder time seeing a small child as potentially a pretty significant villain. And I think my parents are smart enough to know that and are like, yeah, you run front of house. People love a child. And it's good for business and it keeps them out of the public eye.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know that my parents are the best people, I think is really what I'm landing on here. Like, oh,
sure.
But
They're exploiting their small child. That's what's happening here.
Although interesting, let's see. I'm just again reading more, just glancing. Lamia nobles were also capable of venturing further from their lairs than other Lamias and preferred to go into urbanized areas in the guise of a human to infiltrate human and demi-human societies.
Ooh.
So there is at least some plausibility that maybe if they're not appearing as natural Lamias, it could be that like, oh, we're in our humanoid disguises for this environment, this area, so that way we seamlessly blend in, kind of a thing. Do you think that is something that Alanora and her parents are doing, that they're disguising themselves, and so Nox doesn't actually know that they're flesh and blood Lamias?
That is an interesting... It does set us up for some potential conflict later on, doesn't it? Ooh, yeah, you know what? I know that I described her as sort of like having an apron that ties around both like her human waist and cat waist, but I do think it makes for a little bit juicier of a story if Nox doesn't know that I'm not actually human. So yeah, I'm absolutely down with that. Katie looks very betrayed.
I feel such deep hurt in the pits of my soul, but that's fine.
Explains like the cutthroat business nature of the parents then, because they're using their Lamia abilities. They're disguised as humanoids. They're going in and taking out the competition, making shady back alley deals and pressing advantages and blackmail and whatever else to secure their foothold in this community. Meanwhile, oh, okay, we taught our child, our daughter, to be able to disguise herself. You just run this apothecary. That's your job. That's what you do.
Yeah.
And of course, with NPCs on our show, we like them to be able to have a valuable item, a piece of lore, a secret, or maybe even an ideal or concept that the character ascribes to. So to randomly generate these kinds of things, we roll a D4 first for the category, and then we roll a D6 to determine the particular thing.
4.
Also
okay,
4.
Okay, so both of these are ideals or concepts that each of the characters ascribe to. So now you could roll a D6.
D6. 6.
Okay. Your ideal or concept was submitted by Dr. Alex Schulte of the A Couple of Characters podcast. Mathematics. So Nox is really into mathematics.
I mean, it makes sense with her passion for science. She's probably very interested in calculations and readings under the water and understanding what data she can extrapolate and turn into potentially new information about the goings on under the ocean. I'm totally on board.
I got a 2.
All right. Interesting. Your suggestion was given to us by previous guest Patrick Kolb. Astronomy. Alanora really cares about astronomy.
Yeah, so I'm stuck here in this apothecary, but what I really want to do is just live amongst the stars.
Something that maybe before you came to the city, I don't know, in the ruins or whatever, you looked up in the night sky of the desert, you just saw the stars and whatever else.
I wonder if my childhood wasn't filled with stories about how like my like grandparents and great grandparents and sort of like all of my ancestors are up in those stars, and I think that sort of triggered her initial interest in it, and she has since found herself just like on many occasions just staring up into the stars without any concept of how much time has passed.
Does she have like a telescope or anything that she has in like her little room?
For sure, she has a telescope. And just charts of the different the different constellations and how they've moved across the sky, just tacked up on all of her walls.
Does that factor into any of the apothecary work? Like, I don't know, like, if she claims like, oh, because the stars are in this position, when I made this potion, it should give you an extra boost of this kind of a thing. If she believes in, well, I mean, she does believe in that because she believes in astronomy. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's probably a combination of that, and also I think that all of the like labels for things have like constellations on them. I think that she has like taken it upon herself to add artwork to all of the labels, and so there's little drawings of various constellations. And I think that there are themes. You know, like if it's a healing potion, there's sort of like these themes of maybe you have like a specific constellation that's on all of them, but highlighting a different star if it was made at a specific point in the star cycle. I know a lot about astronomy. Definitely.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, this is definitely going to factor into your campaign now. You're going to have to know all about your game universe's astrophysics.
Help me.
Very cool. Yeah, I kind of like that idea of like, this kid who's running the apothecary because, she's the face of the business. The parents taught her how to do all the basics to be able to make all the stuff. So kind of almost it seems like a Matilda-esque sort of situation where she's left to her own devices and she literally has to run this business in the day-to-day operations while the parents are really doing all the cutthroat business stuff behind the scenes. And then they don't care maybe necessarily about the labels. But it's like, hey, their stuff sells well, people like her, and the business is doing well, that kind of thing.
Yeah, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
I'm just curious if Nox picks up on the astronomy theme as far as the...
for sure. Absolutely. I think just the intersection of math and science and astronomy, not that she knows a ton about it, but she probably, checks, what little constellations are on the bottles that day and chats with Nori about it in the morning.
I was going to say probably really interesting between the two different characters. I mean, Nox with the mathematical sort of background and then Alanora with the astronomy background, and comparing notes, maybe where they grew up and, looking up in the night sky from their different vantage points, because obviously the stars are going to look different from desert ruins compared to the snowy peaks of the mountains and stuff like that above the skyline, the thick cloud cover or whatever.
Yeah, I think there's probably been some interesting conversations about like, hold on, that looks wrong. I think you need to fix that. And Nori being like,
definitely it's not wrong. I don't know what you're talking about. I think that I know stars better than you do. You spend all your time underwater. Ridiculous.
We like to give all of our NPCs made on this podcast a side quest. So this could be side quests that each character is willing to offer a group of player characters should they stumble across them. Or maybe it's one that they're going to offer together, whether you decide to roll that randomly or collaborate on that here and now based on what we've learned. If you want to roll for it randomly, the last dice to roll is a D12.
I feel like they're both offering something separate.
I think so too.
Do you want to roll, Ben, or do you want to make one up?
I have been committed to the rolls this entire time, and I'm not stopping now.
I'll commit as well.
Okay.
I got a 12. That is the maximum amount on the last 3 that I have rolled in a row. I'm feeling pretty special right now.
Okay. Well, your side quest suggestion was provided by previous guest Matthew J. Hansen of Sneak Attack Press. Slay a dragon. So literally, Nox needs you to slay a dragon. Is this like a water dragon?
I was gonna say, I think it's sort of like that prehistoric dinosaurs are really just underwater creatures thing, where there's absolutely an underwater sort of sea serpent that is.
I'm sure the Fizben's Treasury of Dragons has some kind of like water ocean dragon, or Cobalt Press or someone has like a water dragon that you could get. So Nox is trying to get into these ruins, but there's literally a dragon that's preventing her team from going in and studying.
Yeah, and I think that she is really stressed out because she just wants this internship to go really well, and they're supposed to go diving the next day, and if the dragon's still there the next day, they're not going to be able to. So she's enlisting some help to clear it all out before things go belly up with her new job. And
then what did Alanora roll?
Well, in keeping with my theme this evening, I rolled a pair of ones, so I got an 11 on my D12 here. I cannot get away from ones this evening.
All right. Well, your answer was provided by previous guest Shannon Robichaud. Collect a valuable material to bring back. So this sounds more like a generic, properly inline fetch quest for the apothecary. So what is it that Alanora needs brought back, do you think?
Human flesh.
Oh, God.
I'm kidding. What? You gotta get dinner. Come on, man. Ooh, what kind of... Ooh, you know what? In keeping with her theme, I think that she has probably been tracking a recent meteorite She like, saw it come through and kind of like was able to figure out, probably with help from Nox, do some of the math around like trajectory, etc., and where approximately it would have fallen. And I think that it's the whatever is left of the meteorite she would like people to go find.
And it's probably in the ocean or the
Without
sea.
a doubt, in City Ocean.
That's why. Yeah, that's why she needs Nox's help to be like, where's the math of where it would land? I was gonna say,
Tell me about your water things.
You could coincidentally, yeah, if you wanted to tie this up nicely with a bow, it'd be like, well, that meteorite just happens to crash into the ruins that we need to go investigate that has a dragon.
And the dragon has definitely hung on to it because it's a meteorite, and that metal is potentially very precious.
Am I allowed to retcon what I look like? Because I feel like as I've gotten to know her a little better, the fashion icon just is not fitting.
Okay, yeah, sure, yeah.
I feel like I'm still down with her having some like tie-dyed purple strands in her, I don't want to say hair because she has hair everywhere, but on top of her head. But I think that instead of a crop top and jeans, she's just wearing a big oversized sweatshirt that has the logo of the company that she's working for on. And she definitely still has braces.
Interesting. Were the braces introduced into her upbringing culture in the mountains, or is this like she came to civilization, they were like, oh, your teeth do not look good?
I think it's the latter. I think it's the latter. I think she got super self-conscious when she moved and she started seeing people who all had just really nice teeth, and she inquired around a little bit. She found a good dentist that can work on yetis, and she's spending the summer getting her chompers aligned,
Yeah. Oh, and now that it's summer and she's down from the mountains in this more desert port town, she wouldn't have white fur. She'd probably have like that
brown fur,
brown, darker kind of fur. So
absolutely.
Okay, now that we know what the side quest for each of our characters is going to be, when the heroes come back, or the player characters come back and they've successfully completed the mission, what is going to be their reward?
The undying admiration of a child.
I don't know if that's quite enough.
I think for Alanora, being that she runs front of house, I think that there's probably a lifetime discount.
Okay. And her parents would be okay with this, or she'd have to keep this from her parents?
This is one of those things where I think especially because she's developed a friendship with Nox, who's very good at math, she would be able to make an argument that, like, sure, yes, we're taking less upfront from these folks, but if we know that they are capable of like transplanar
very
travel.
Very smart child when it comes to business.
She's running the whole shop herself. She's a smart kid. We secure consistent business and we'll make more money off of them in the long run than just like a one-time thing. If they know they're going to get a better deal here, they are more inclined potentially to just pop back every time they need to refill.
And then how does Nox reward the party for killing a dragon?
Yeah, that's a great question.
Yeti fur sweaters.
I was legitimately going to say that I was like, that is not a great reward compared to the endeavor that this poor player has embarked on. Are there any things lore-wise? I don't know. Is Yeti fur valuable? Are Yeti teeth not that I'm going to pull out a tooth, but I'm just curious if there's anything written by the book about a Yeti that is valuable.
Yeti oil could be used as poison. Yeti teeth and claws could be sold as trinkets, whereas Yeti fur was highly valued for its heat-retaining characteristics, is what it says.
Oh, interesting. You know what? I'm going to make them a Yeti fur snowsuit. I shed anyway. So...
Yeah, you had to shed your entire winter coat in order to get ready for summer.
So I've got that all sitting in my closet right now. I'm not sure what I'm going to do with it.
Just a giant hairball in your closet.
In my closet.
It's like a second Yeti.
Well, I know that it's valuable.
Yeah,
it's a very valuable hair suit.
It's a very valuable hair suit.
Okay, interesting. So, I don't know how you'd classify it as common or uncommon, but certainly a very unique hair suit for heat retaining probably gives you resistance or immunity to cold damage, would you think?
Yeah, I think,
probably
you know what,
for cold damage.
Oh, I was gonna say for slaying a dragon I'd happily do immunity, but resistance does make more sense.
Well, because then you could also be one of those things, where, like Goliaths are immune to the adverse effects of being in really, really cold areas. Also, probably immunity to that, where you never have to worry about making constitution checks or saving throws to not suffer a point of exhaustion from adverse weather.
that sounds right. So yeah, you're immune to the cold condition, and you don't have to make those cons checks, and then also you have resistance to cold damage. It's pretty cool suit.
All right, so now we figured out what the cool rewards are for these side quests that are being offered, but we have to consider the opposite effect. What's going to be the consequence of failure or refusing the call to the adventure? So they happen to stumble upon this apothecary shop and they meet both characters who are offering up a 2-for-1 special with 2 different side quests. What's going to be the consequence if they, I don't know, is there a different consequence if they like accept one but refuse the other? They just refuse them both outright, or what are you thinking?
I mean, I think that the very obvious, at least for mine, is that any kind of piece of this part of the ocean will be ostensibly off limits to them. So if there's any other treasure or any other sort of quests that have to happen in that area, if they don't slay the dragon first, they're not going to been able to essentially like cross that barrier to get to the rest of whatever is down there. Yeah.
And then as far as Alanora is concerned with the missing meteorite or the crashed meteorite in the ocean.
Let's see. I guess refusal. You just have to live with the guilt of knowing that you disappointed a child.
Mm-hmm.
Like just the biggest, saddest. You know, Puss in Boots from like when they do it in Shrek, where his eyes get like really big. I think she does that. And if you like said no, it would just be like the saddest face. And also, it's her villain origin story, and she will hunt the party down forever.
It's true. It does say by the books typically that Lamia are considered chaotic evil. So until this point, she didn't really adhere to any one particular kind of alignment, but your refusal now makes her a chaotic evil Lamia.
Failure, I think, would be met somewhat differently, just like disappointment, but...
Mm-hmm. Like they killed the dragon, but I don't know, in the course of killing the dragon, something collapsed and then the meteor got buried and they were never able to get it or something like that.
Yeah. She would just be really, really sad, and maybe there'd be some sort of a roll off to see if she tried to feed them to her parents.
And then thereby exposing her true nature to Nox, and then setting off the chain of events there between the conflict between Nox and Alanora. Then I suppose
perhaps. No, I think she understands. I mean, she's not stupid. I think that she understands that like this is a cover that cannot be blown. I think she would just be really bummed. She'd be really hurt, not by them, right? Obviously, it's not personal, but just it's a kid who really was hoping for this thing that they spent a lot of time and effort tracking, and I think she'd be really bummed.
Mm-hmm.
Not mad, just disappointed.
Oh, that's a dad line for sure.
Mm-hmm. I'm practicing.
There you go. Yeah. All right. Well, now that we've learned so much more about Nox and Alanora, I think it's time we head into a segment that I like to call the Random Encounter. This Random Encounter is brought to you by Fill in the Blank. Wait a minute. What? Is that correct? Is that right here? Well, yeah, sort of actually. So unfortunately, with the passing of Ed over at Reaper Miniatures, for the time being, the sponsorship program with Reaper Miniatures is being put on hiatus, which is fine. They said that my link would still work if you want to use it on my older episodes, but otherwise, it won't do anything else special. Still, I want to encourage you all to support Reaper Miniatures, show them your love and support in their time of need. So what does this mean for this particular ad break section of the show? Before we get to do a little role-playing vignette, well, I guess that means if you out there in the Levitating Platter have something you'd like to plug, and you've got an affiliate program or an advertising budget which you have some money to use to pay me with, well, then I'm happy to take a look at your proposals and see what kind of partnership we can form. As you know, this podcast is a labor of love, and thanks to some very awesome and very kind patrons, I can continue to keep the ever-burning torches on, as well as have a normal social life away from the podcast without it consuming my every waking hour. I'm very blessed and very thankful. I would prefer if you email me details of your projects and Kickstarters and whatever else at my email address, sidekicksandsidequests@gmail.com. I know you can reach me on various social media platforms, which you can give me the basic details there. However, I will ask you, please send me an email because I won't agree to do anything unless it's ethereally emailed to me and we're conducting a correspondence in that manner. So again, with all of that out of the way, I hope to hear from some rich noblewoman or eccentric lord soon. Now, on with the show. All right, so random encounter segment is where we like to do a little role play, a little vignette, and kind of get an idea of these characters. So the question becomes, what kind of scene are we interested in doing today? Is it going to be Nox and Alanora meeting one of the podcast player characters? Is it going to be just Nox and Alanora having their own scene themselves and like discussing the meteorite that's crashed and stuff like that? The exposition NPC background dialogue that goes on before the player characters walk into the shop, or something else like with the parents involved there or something. I don't know. What kind of scene interests you?
What are you feeling, Benjamin?
Can I roll for this one? No. That is a good question. I know this is probably the single least helpful answer I could give, and Katie is already making a face. I am up for anything.
Well, I mean, if it helps, I can name off some of the podcast player characters to, see if that interests y'all. So we have Duncan, who's the recklessly brave adventurer for hire. He's happy-go-lucky. We've got Sonia, the warrior woman, who started off as a barbarian, multi-classed into paladin, serving the god that redeems the undead. We have Korak, the lawful evil arcane trickster, roguish dwarf. We've got Chrisley, who's the herbalist, botanist, wood elf druid, who became a cleric of the living memory. And then the final character we introduced, Orion, who is the astral elf, illusionist wizard.
I know which one of these characters Alanora is definitely interested in meeting, and it is our astral elf, because, However, Katie, do you have anything that you would like to say?
I was gonna say I want to meet the druid, but I'm also happy to meet the elf.
Well, technically, the druid and the wizard are both elven characters, so it's just a matter of, well, do you want to meet a wizard or do you want to meet a druid?
Either one, and I'm very happy. You want to meet the wizard, so let's meet the wizard.
Yeah, let's meet the wizard.
Where we last left our hero, Orion, I believe that he was with Moon, the Gloomstalker fairy, had come across her need to help find likewise a crashed meteor in order to help stabilize her lycanthropy powers. So she had more control going through this area that had a natural portal to the Shadowfell nearby. So it's some time that Orion has spent a long time in the material plane, far away from the astral sea and wild space and all that sort of stuff, that he finds himself emerging out of these wooded areas with portals to the Shadowfell and whatnot. He finds himself now kind of on this desert coastal area. And it's not long before he's walking down along the avenues and minding the stores that he then sees a familiar signage that seems to indicate like, oh, this is an apothecary. And so he checks his supplies and he's like, well, I am starting to get low on quite a number of things, not having it so readily available as I once had back with my crew on the ship. So he will open the door into the apothecary shop, and upon entering, what does he see?
He sees a neatly organized shop with a selection of sort of like pre-made potions that are all behind the desk, or the counter, I should say, as well as a lot of raw materials, sort of like various leaves and berries and whatnot that you might need for whatever your herbalist heart might desire. And sitting sort of in a direct, definitely like in the sunlight that is coming through one of the windows, and certainly she moves with it as it moves across the countertop, is the little Alanora, sort of sitting there, her with one ear sort of like twitched towards the door as it opens. But she's not necessarily looking at him immediately.
Yeah,
and she does appear as a humanoid.
She does appear. So, ear twitched. I guess she like twitches a little bit as she can. I can wiggle my ears. She wiggles her ears. There we go.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think sort of hunched over the counter, looking at a bunch of different vials of probably honestly a variety of potions, is a very large, hulking yeti who, despite being very big, somewhat unassuming, which feels very counterintuitive, but it's just, you walk into the room and you're like, I'm not scared of her at all. And she's kind of, she's looking at it about, she's like, oh, wow, this is really cool. Is this Virgo at this one? Is that what we got here?
That's Pisces. You should know that already. We've talked about this a lot. Oh wow, we have the same voice. What's the problem? Why do you sound like a 7-year-old? I was just thinking I kind of have that like nasally teenager thing going on, but yeah, now we do sound very, very similar.
And then Orion will just kind of like coolly walk in and kind of appraise the situation, very calmly just be like, hello, I hope that I'm not intruding. Are you open for business?
Taking on a new voice because we can't sound the same.
Oh, hiya, mister. Yeah, we're open for business. What do you need?
Oh, and so then Orion will very quickly pull out like a long list, and it's like all these different kinds of spell components. And he's like, I require these materials. I have spent some time here in the prime material plane, and a lot of my resources have been exhausted. And so he will reach into a coin pouch that he has on his side, and he pulls out like coinage, but it looks like very otherworldly, astral sea equivalent, so it's still like gold and stuff like that, but it maybe has a different sheen or some kind of interesting intrinsic quality about it, mixed with like some other common coinage from this area. And so he's like, I have this for payment, so if you can find these materials, that would be most appreciated. And he'll like look over and see the large yeti, not phased, not intimidated in the slightest.
Well, Nori's the best. She's gonna get you everything you need.
It's Alanora. And I look at this coin.
She wants to pick up one of the like unfamiliar ones.
Sure, yeah. He'll be like, yes, yeah, sure.
Where is this from? Where are you from? You said you've spent time on the prime material plane?
Yes, and you look closer at Orion, and you can see his eyes. Like normal elves, I guess, sometimes they don't have eyes, or they have like different colorations or whatever going on. But you look in his eyes, and it's almost like he has like swirling galaxies or constellations within his own eyes as he's looking at you. And he's like, well, I'm from the astral sea. He's like, not to bore you with too many details, but I was on a ship in the wild space, and we hit a storm. We hit some sort of astral dreadnought. I don't know. It was all a blur. And then I woke up and, well, I'm here in the prime material plane. Haven't quite found a way to get back, but not also too eager to get back there as well.
I think as soon as she notices the galaxies like in his eyes, I think Alanora has completely lost track of the fact that they're supposed to be like conducting a business transaction, and her jaw just like fully drops, and she's just like standing there like open mouthed for an uncomfortably long time.
I think at a certain point, Nox just like
Orion would probably say something because, he's still a little alien in a way. He's just, the people here are definitely a lot more odd than they are back home for sure. He kind of regards himself as kind of like this Spock Vulcan-esque sort of a character. So he's just like, he's always analytical, and he's like trying to analyze people and just being like fascinating kind of a attitude when he's like encountering people that are just acting very strange around him.
Hey, mister?
He turns to look.
Are you an adventurer?
He smiles from the corner of his mouth, and he'll stick his hands out, and then he starts projecting like an image of a solar system in his hands, and he's like starts moving his hands around to make planets and the asteroids and the other celestial bodies move. And he says, yeah, you might consider me someone of that nature.
Thank God.
You know space.
Because I'm gonna lose my job if someone doesn't go into the ocean and get rid of the big sea dragon real soon. And I really don't want to go home. I'm having a great time. Plus, also, I need another 3 months before I can get these off. And she points at the braces. And she's like, and if I go home, then I'm just going to have braces for the rest of my life. And that sounds horrible.
She can't eat apples currently.
Or popcorn. Or bubblegum. Or carrots. That's a weird one.
Did you see the meteorite the other day?
He'll roll a history check and herb nature check, I guess, and he does like okay, and he's like, oh yes, I did see something in the sky earlier, but I didn't really pay much mind to it before.
Well, okay, hold on 1 second.
And she's gonna run upstairs to her room and come down with like a bunch of charts.
So I was tracking it for kind of a while, and I figured her help.
I'm very, very, very good at
Where it landed, it seems like it's probably in the vicinity of the dragon thing. But you're from the stars.
Yes.
You, I really love the stars. Would you get them? Would you bring a meteorite back? I'll help with your. You think about it, and
I'm just gonna grab the list and start running around frantically trying to find all the things that is on the list.
He'll turn and just say, I think this is where the phrase "two birds with one stone" would come to play, I suppose. So kill a dragon and get a meteorite, eh?
That would be so great. Oh my God, I'd be so happy.
He'll nod and then he'll just smile very small, but he'll say, sure, why not? I haven't tangled with a dragon yet, so better add that to my repertoire.
It's really big though. I just want to let you know now so you're not surprised when you get there.
All right. And so then he will work to get the details from Nox, and he will work to get whatever supplies he needs, and then he will set forth into the ocean to do battle with the beast.
Amazing. Definitely Alanora absolutely has maps drawn and has plotted all of the stuff. So she sends him out well equipped.
And scene. All right. So now we've had the random encounter where we've gotten to know Nox and Alanora. So what did you think of the experience of getting to be both of these characters?
Gotta love them.
I would be lying if I said that I didn't want to somehow work Alanora into...
What about Nox?
Well, that's your character. I don't want to presume.
I'd like to meet Nox.
Oh, I mean, I would love to put the two of them. I think that the potential friendship between this giant yeti and this small child is
giant yeti nerd.
Yes. and tiny astronomer is too cute to pass up on. I fully plan on incorporating them at some point in the future into a campaign or a one shot.
Yeah, that's what we like to hear, is that just, some seemingly wholesome pair of characters somehow find their way into a game somewhere at someone's table.
Yeah. Also, Nori's parents could be some very cool potential big bads. Just throwing that out there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, especially if they're these Lamia nobles or something like that apparently were prone to outbursts of senseless violence. So if that has to feed into their ruthless business nature or something like that, that becomes another side quest or just a background plot thing going in this town. They're all these people are ending up dead and stuff like that. And there's, some real shady, underhanded business going on. And so the players are chasing a red herring, think it's the Thieves Guild. But then they're it's not us. We're not the ones doing the killing. It's something else much more monstrous. And then they uncover there's a whole family of Lamias that have been operating in this city.
I love it. We've got lore for an entire town now.
I do wonder if Alanora isn't aware, is truly in the dark about her parents, which could also be a fun moment for a DM to be I'm going to pull on all of your heartstrings now. Here's this child who's learning that her parents are terrible. Yeah, I think she's just a cute little kid who is running the family business. I don't think she knows.
Ooh.
Yeah, I think she's in the dark.
Okay.
Which is where she likes to be, because she likes the stars anyways.
There we go. Making it wholesome.
Bam.
Wholesome for the kids. We love that here. All right. Well, yeah, so we're starting to get into the final thoughts segment of the show. So I always like to check in with the guests. Certainly you've been very patient and accommodating with me. But yeah, what did you think of your experience here on the podcast today?
It was so much fun.
Absolutely
I had such a good time.
I want to create all of my NPCs this way.
It's a really cool way of approaching NPC creation, because especially I feel like the way that my brain works, and I think the way that your brain works, is I like to I'm actively working to find the through line that ties everything together. So when you randomize that aggressively, it's kind of a mental exercise to be okay, so I have all these things now. What is a logical way that these things could actually go together?
Mm-hmm.
And that's fun. That's a lot of fun.
Yeah. It's a little bit freeing in a way, because then you're not oh my gosh, what am I doing? I'm imposter syndrome. And it's no, it's just rolling on dice. And then here's this person that exists in the world. You breathe a human or maybe not necessarily human life, but you breathe a humanity into the character, and now they have like a history, a voice, a presence, a soul, if you will, in them. And so now you get to bring them to your player characters around the table, and then they're like, whoa, I've never... A yeti that's a deep sea archaeologist? I have never in my wildest dreams would have ever thought of this.
With braces. Don't forget the braces.
The braces.
Braces are important.
Yeah, this podcast, we like to inspire people to be able to make cool NPCs, whether they take them whole cloth from us, maybe they tweak some things with the characters from our show, or it just inspires them to decide to make their own random tables. So I can't copyright or trademark these random tables I have. But you're certainly more than welcome to, kind of borrow the format. And if you decide for your live stream, maybe that's a segment that you do. You're just like, hey, we're going to do a stream and we're just going to roll some dice and we're going to discover who this NPC is. And then we're going to figure out where they would end up in the world or something. That might be a fun community thing to do or something.
I see the wheels in Ben's head turning right now.
Yep.
He loves that idea.
I am all about making NPCs that are also totally viable PCs. Like, because it, as a DM, it makes it allows me to like inhabit them and feel like I know the character. And I think, like to what Katie said, right, having those pieces randomized does make it a little bit more interesting, because it's like, when I come up with these things, there's gonna be a clear through line from like, okay, why do X, Y, and Z things happen, and why do they like this, etc. But having it be more random, I think, gives them a different personality to it, and I like that a lot. I'll definitely be doing that. Excellent. You have inspired me. So at least in one case, absolute success.
As long as I get a kickback somehow with like some sort of like, hey, I got this great idea from being on this particular podcast.
Oh,
you
for
should
sure.
Listen to them, support them on Patreon, and leave Apple podcast reviews or whatever.
Only good ones, though.
Yes. I mean, I'll take the bad ones. You got to take the good with the bad.
That's fair.
The rain and the sun shine on the good and the bad alike, as the good book says. So, as we're getting here into the very final moments of the podcast, we always like to leave the stage, the microphone, the soapbox, the platform to the guests. So anything you've got to plug, where can we find you online if you want to be found online, that kind of thing, and any passions or causes that we should know about.
Oh, man. Okay, so I am at Katie Mera, at KATIEMEHERA. The H is silent. Don't ask me why my parents did that. It's fine. On all social media. And also Ben and I and many other people stream probably too often on twitch.tv/amateurish productions. Our main campaign is every Tuesday, now at 7 p.m. It used to be at 9 p.m. That is changing. And the schedule changes weekly. That is kind of the only thing that is set in stone. So that gets posted on Twitter every week. Usually gets updated on Twitch, but Twitter is definitely the source of truth for what on earth is going to be going on over on Amateurish for that given week.
And I am at Ben_M_squared on Twitter and Instagram, although I don't really use Instagram. Don't follow me there. It's such a like my presence on Instagram is so painfully millennial. It'll just hurt people. And Katie covered everything else because she's a champ and keeps my head from falling off my shoulders.
I feel like I need to advocate for cause because you specifically said any causes.
I definitely have a cause, actually, now that I'm thinking about it. Okay, with the full disclosure that it is a nonprofit run by my mother. There's a nonprofit called Haven's Harvest. They do food rescue in the greater New Haven area here in Connecticut, which is where I am from originally. And she moves like millions of pounds a year, taking food from restaurants and university kitchens and grocery stores that would otherwise be thrown away, and brings them to community centers to ensure that, one, it's not being wasted, and it also simultaneously address the massive issue of food insecurity in this country, and particularly the availability of like high quality food to folks who might not have the means. And they can be found at havensharvest.org, and they do excellent work on less than a shoestring budget.
I'll just echo that. I think that Haven's Harvest is super important. I don't need to bring another cause into it. Go check them out. They are wonderful. Ben's mother works way too much and does just incredible things for the community here. So I also go support them.
Well, hey, between that and Travis Frederick's Blocking Hunger organization that helps to fight childhood hunger here in the DFW area, I'm all for ending hunger because everyone's hearts and bellies should be full.
Yes, absolutely.
Could not agree more.
All right. Well, Ben and Katie and Ben, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy evening to be a pair of guests on my humble podcast, and hope to have you back on in the future to make even more randomized characters.
Would love to. Thank you for having us on.
Yeah, thank
It's
you
been a
so
blast.
much.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Sidekicks and Side Quests. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast through Apple Podcast, Google Play, Spotify, and Overcast, or feel free to save the RSS feed to use the app of your choice. Visit our website, sidekicksandsidequests.com, for links, write-ups of the NPCs, and to learn more about the show and the guests who have been on it. To stay up to date and interact via social media, you can follow the podcast on Facebook, Twitter, and Reddit by searching for SideKQ Podcast. I would love to talk D&D and showcase your fan art, stories of how you used our NPCs, discussions, and commentary. If you would like to hail the bard, simply send an email to sidekicksandsidequests@gmail.com. To help this show be the resource it's meant to be, I ask that you please leave a review on iTunes to help spread the word and share our podcast with your friends and family. Whether you're a veteran player or an aspiring dungeon master, or you've never played Dungeons & Dragons before, there's something here for everyone, and I want to hear about it. And finally, after 2 years, I've decided to open a Patreon for Sidekicks and Side Quests. If you love this podcast and you want to help us grow and expand our operations, I would appreciate it if you would go on over to patreon.com/sidekicks and side quests. No matter your lifestyle expenses, we have wonderful rewards at every level of Patreon membership tier. Your name on the wall of the levitating platter, a loud hurrah on the podcast, or the possibility to introduce an element of chance to NPC creation. Sidekicks and Side Quests is unofficial fan content permitted under the fan content policy, meaning I'm not approved or endorsed by Wizards. Portions of the materials used are property Wizards of the Coast, copyright Wizards of the Coast, LLC. Thank you for your support, and I'll see you at the pub next time.
Bar to rock on 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4.